Really?
Want to get going here.
And we are live.
Welcome to Senate Chat, the Senate's daily availability for our media to ask questions. And for those who are watching us over the internet, we welcome you and hope you'll send in some questions today. We'll start with our media representatives. Any questions that you have?
The House's Medicaid bill will be coming to the floor now in the Senate. Can you tell me what you think of it? Are you happy enough, or think it's still being too low? Or
I think that the Senate is favorable to the bill. I think it's in committee this afternoon, isn't it?
this morning's plan.
Oh, it passed this morning, okay. All indications that Senator Oakland, all the indications we've got is that people are pretty pleased that we're gonna get something done.
Yeah, any opposition?
Senator Maine, Democratic Caucus?
Yes, we're not pleased, obviously, because it's not inclusive for all that's needed. It's a small portion of what is needed. I appreciate the representative doing something, but the something isn't big enough and inclusive enough to really help.
We've got it funded in the budget, so if it passes on the floor of the Senate, this will be the new policy going forward, at least initially. And any other questions on Medicaid?
Do you think, well, I guess this is the crystal ball question, but are you going to be coming back next year and expanding it, do you think? I mean, to more people beyond the 16,000 that would be covered under the Dunnigan proposal?
I don't know of any discussion about that. I think that the anticipation is that we would see how this works, and if it's working well, then we could expand the number of recipients in that program and begin to continue to whittle away. So one of the things you could do, you could increase the percentage for those families or parents with children, which I think he's increasing it to like almost 50% from 40, 55. I don't know the exact numbers, but we could raise it to 60, or we could raise it to 65 or 70, depending on what money we have available in the budget next year, as far as new money, building blocks.
And especially sales tax money. That's
our challenge.
dropped again 30 million at the time we got our February estimates.
So, yeah.
You guys didn't really do anything to address that though this year, did you? I mean, you've got the internet sales tax bill, I guess.
We sent a bill, Harper's bill, out of here at 29-0.
You're right. Beyond that, I mean, beyond that, do you see the need to actually? We talked about this, I think, before the session, for sort of a general sales tax increase to sort of bolster, to keep the general fund from withering away to nothing.
The problem with that I see is where the base is being narrowed. Then when you raise the rate, it's on a very narrow base, and you're almost punishing those vendors when we need to broaden the base and leave the rate the same. Then you'd have the growth that you would have otherwise had.
Because you're capturing the tax on the brick and mortar sellers, and you're not capturing.
Right. Yeah. So I think personally, I think it's an unfair situation for them.
Agreed.
Other questions?
Have you figured out how or if you're going to deal with the signature gathering portion in SB 54?
To answer your question, no, we haven't figured anything out. I don't know of a Senate bill that is moving to address it. There are a number of ideas, I think, that people are obviously talking about, and there may be something that still may be a solution, but we're kind of waiting to see how that plays out right now, see if there is something that comes forward. I don't know of anything specifically at this point. Obviously, we're going to have to see what the judge finally does determine, but at this point we don't have anything specifically to report to you on that.
Do you think you need to do something, or is it best just to leave it to the court to decide?
Well, there are a lot of different thoughts on that. Some would think maybe that's the way to do it, to wait and see what the judge says. Others think maybe that there's a suggestion from the judge that we try to do something, and that something might, there's a big range of things that could be considered. So at this point, I think everything is ideas, and I don't know of anything concrete that's moving forward yet.
You met, I think, House and Senate leadership today, didn't you, on that issue?
No, we have not.
Oh, maybe it was just House leadership meeting today on that issue.
It's later this evening.
Okay. Do you feel like, I mean, is it the opinion of your council that you need 2/3? Initially that's what I was told, but then I was told today that maybe you don't.
Ideally, you'd need 2/3 for immediate effective date. And I can't remember all the legalese on this, but if we were to pass a bill that created a new threshold, say 3%, then at least the judge would have some indication if it didn't have some immediate effective date. If we just got majorities, then at least it would go into effect at some point. And I think that if the judge needed to, he could rule that that's what's going to work. But I think our legal counsel is saying it's in time because the primary isn't until June. So there's a lot of those things that we've discussed, but that's the result of that discussion.
I think there's a difference where you reduce the requirements. If, on the other hand, we were to raise it, say to run for the Senate, you had to have 4,000 signatures after the day started gathering, I think the court would strike that down pretty quickly. But if you set 2,000 down to 5% or 3%, but no more than 2,000, then I think you would be safer.
Yeah, I mean, the discussion.
The judge indicated some percentages, I think, or just gave it some, so, yeah, something like that. And there's other, I think 3% is in the statute already
For
counties. So,
And for unaffiliated candidates, I think.
I mean, that seems to be a percentage that would seem most likely, my guess. But that's just my guess.
So you got to kind of move fairly quickly on this, though, I assume. I mean, in as much as you guys are meeting this evening, if you kind of come out of that meeting and say, all right, let's do this, are you going to be able to get a hearing? And I know you can suspend.
Yeah, we can do all that.
There's a perception issue, I guess.
Yeah, and the difficulty is you've got all members of the House and half the members of the Senate that are up for election this year have to face delegates, many of which don't like the convention. Don't like the SB 54 compromise, and so the politics are really difficult for the legislature right now. And of course, we'd want to agree with the House on some bill to pass, so that they didn't pass it and we didn't, or we passed some bill and they didn't. And so that's the challenge that we face with this. And maybe tonight at joint leadership, Senator Okerlund will get to some kind of an idea of where we're going to head with this and have more clarity. But I don't have the clarity at this point.
So this is kind of a end of session type question, but among the general public, or at least some of the general public, there seems to be a sentiment that the legislature never addresses education, never gives us clean air, and listens too much to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What are your feelings on people who continue to persist that that's the environment up here?
Well, you've given us a lot of questions there in one. Anyone specifically? So we address clean air. The biggest issue we can deal with as clean air is Senator Okerlund's bill on Tier 3 fuels. We can nibble at it with bills and they're more mainly feel-good bills, in my opinion. If we really want to do something, let's get Tier 3 fuels.
Yeah. Tier 3 fuel really is
It
the
makes
one
the
big
change.
item that will allow us to clean up the air quickly. And we do a lot of little things incrementally, it's going to help, but to be able to get those refineries producing Tier 3 fuel allows us to clean tailpipe emissions once we get the vehicles that are able to use Tier 3 fuel by 2025, the requirement. It'll clean up tailpipe emissions by 80%. That means we clean up the entire air by around 30 to 40%. That's a huge reduction. And it's the one thing that will allow us to be able to do that and to get the refineries to be able to do that by 2020 or shortly after 2020. We start penalizing them as they go out further from 2020 as to the tax increment that they're eligible for. This is going to hurry them up, and we're being told by the refineries that as a result of this, they are going to go to Tier 3 fuel production, make the investment to upgrade their facilities to the Tier 3 fuel production, and that's going to make a huge difference. There's nothing else we can do that would have that much of an effect on our air.
I guess a better question would be too is, do you worry about the perception of the legislature at all while you're up here?
Of course, but I think I mentioned this, was it Brian Schott, before the session started, the question was asked, well, your approval rating is much less than the governor's approval rating. And why is that? Well, the reason for it is we have 104 people with all kinds of different ideas that we have to address because they bring bills before us. The governor is a committee of one. He kind of determines what he says, what he has a lot more control over what happens in his world. We don't have a lot of control over that here. And so we address all these issues and many of which people think are we shouldn't address, but somebody brought it to us, and that's our process. It's a free speech issue for us, and if we don't like it, we just say no. So, and you know, with the clean air thing, there's regulations in place already and with Tier 3 fuels, to clean this air substantially over the next decade, even though we have population increases. So there's already policies in place. I read somewhere just over the weekend that Utah has been rated number 10 in the nation now as far as new buildings that are being built, the number of LEED certified buildings. So it isn't that we're not doing anything, we're doing a lot here in Utah. We live in a basin, that's our biggest problem, and I can't legislate that away. It's just not gonna happen. And so we have to do everything that we can, but let's not just nibble around the corners, let's do some substantive things, and we already have a lot of those things in place.
Do you mind if I jump in on the education question that he asked?
Yes.
So, Senator Lincoln Fillmore, part of your question was about education, and point out that this year the legislature is planning to appropriate $440 million in increases to education, which is more than the governor asked for. And that we're going to be spending that money with a large increase of the weighted pupil unit, as well as tackling some other priorities, including technology in the classroom, and specifically using it to fund students that have historically been underfunded in Utah. I've got a chart that we passed out on the Senate floor last night regarding Senate Bill 244 that I'll pass out and make available to the media. But just what it does is, what we're after is to try to target the growth in education spending to the students and the school districts that need it the most. The best way to impact teacher salaries, the teacher shortage, is to be able to get salaries up, but we'll never really make as good of an impact on that if we keep the large disparity between the rich and the poor school districts. We need to be able to bring the floor of education funding closer to the ceiling so that then the salary schedules will naturally move up as those at the bottom will have more buying power.
Any other questions? Questions from our viewers?
We do have one.
Thanks for sending in questions.
Similar to what we've already discussed, this person on Twitter wants to know why when the Mormon Church speaks, the Senate will do anything they ask. Does separation of church and state not apply in Utah?
Well, first of all, the church, LDS Church, weighs in on very few issues, alcohol, moral issues. So we may hear from them on one or two bills, maybe half a dozen during the session. It's very minimal. They're high-profile bills, and so you get that impression. But for the most part, we are dealing with all kinds of issues without any influence from the LDS Church.
And obviously, the LDS Church is the predominant religion, but I have to tell you, I hear from churches all across the state, different denominations, who weigh in on issues. It isn't just the LDS Church who has opinions on some of the issues that we deal with. And frankly, I've heard from a number of different denominations on issues this year. I do every year. It just isn't as widely reported. And, you know, I think in a lot of cases, the senators are less influenced by whether or not the LDS Church weighs in on an issue as they are on the policies that we're debating themselves. And often there could be some input from churches, from different churches, including the LDS Church, that it seems like maybe that has a huge difference, when in fact senators have to make a decision based on policies and what's good for the state. And those policy determinations are what makes this such a great process and something that we have to do. So I think perception is probably that there's more influence than there really is.
I'd add two things. I've never been told by the Mormon Church how to vote on anything. I've met with people and they've given their ideas that they're... The second thing is most people in my district know that I'm an active Mormon. And when they say things, these are things I generally believe anyway. And the vast majority of my district's the same way. So it's, when people say we do what the church tells us, I would say that's really not true in the aspect that people perceive that we get a word from the church and we automatically change whatever we're doing to correspond with what they ask. And that's not my experience of here.
Okay, one more question. Thank you for sending that question.
This one came in via YouTube. When is the non-compete agreement bill going to the full Senate, and what are the chances of it passing?
I'm going to predict that in its form today that it won't pass in that form if it does pass. And I would think that we probably would hear it tomorrow. That would be my prediction.
Yep. It's coming.
Any other questions?
Let me make one suggestion. I had a handout that I talked about Senate Bill 2, and I've got one, I'm going to do House Bill 2, that's going to explain all the budget procedures we have. I'll make sure that everyone here in the press gets a copy of it, and we probably ought to post it, because it'll let people go through and see what we funded in education and all these other things. And as well as that sheet we have that has all the breakdowns and where they can find it in the bill. I think that'd be good things for you to have and to post.
Senator Maine, anything else you'd like to say today?
No, I think we're on our way, and we're really efficient, I think, in getting our bills out, and I hope the other side will do what we do. And we've had a really successful session, I think, and I'm speaking, I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm non-Mormon, and I've never felt there's communication when need be about legislation that is not concerned, but they are interested in. But then the Catholic Church is very active. They have a very strong social conscience, and they're here a lot. I being a Methodist, we have Methodist Day, and the Protestants come up. So I think all the denominations have a say, and I think my colleagues would be the same. They listen to all of them the same, and so we appreciate that input. But I don't feel any more pressure, not even pressure, concern when they speak to me. It's just any other group that has concerns about legislation.
Thanks for being with us, Senator Fillmore, to talk about equity funding with schools. And Senator Adams, you had a comment?
Yeah, just on House Bill 251, the non-compete, maybe tomorrow, but I just assume we deal with that sooner than later, so if there's any way to get, I'd surely support that, so anyway.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for those who are watching us today. We'll be back tomorrow, second to the last day tomorrow.
You guys gonna?
You take that,
Shirley?